Exposed, the sinister logging job in the Yukon with 7 haunting rules for survival. Sarah had thought she was making a fresh start when she packed her things and moved her kids to the Yukon logging camp, but nothing could prepare her for the creeping dread wrapped around the towering pines. When her office job disappeared in the chaos of the city's economic downturn, she thought this rugged wilderness might offer a faster route to stability, a chance to reset their battered lives. Alone at camp, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was off. The whispers traveled through the trees, and a chilling silence seemed to hold the forest in its grip, pressing down on her with an eerie weight. Something was waiting just beyond the edge of trees. The loggers shared stories around the flickering campfire, their faces illuminated by the uneasy light. With a camaraderie that felt thick enough to cut, they cracked jokes and laughed, eyes darting, yet Sarah sensed tension beneath their bravado. "You don't want to be out in them woods alone after dark," one of them warned, his voice low and serious. The stories they spun about Cree folklore felt like a mesh of fear stitched into the very fabric of the land, tales of vengeful spirits, of shadows that hunted, of eyes watching in the dark. She chuckled, brushing off the old superstitions as rustic nonsense. But then came the tales of loggers disappearing amidst the fog, out of sight and out of mind. As the sun sank below the mountains, shadows twisted around her, creeping in closer. She listened intently as the stories grew darker, the atmosphere thick with terror. "Never look back if you see a flash of red, that's how they take you," another logger said, his voice tense. 7 rules to follow if you want to make it out alive." A clammy chill washed over her. These became her waking nightmares, flashing in her mind, the men who simply vanished, the panic flaring in their eyes, beneath the laughter roamed uncertainty. Why were they telling her this? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but now, with every fading day, unease settled into her bones. The foreman, a charismatic man with a predatory gleam in his eye, seemed to know more than he let on. As if orchestrating the chaos from behind a veil, he kept her ensnared in a web of charm and dread. She felt like a marionette dancing on a string that tightened with each passing day. Loggers would drift away in the gloom, sliced from the safety of the camp chatter, leaving behind an echo that chilled her. The community she sought for protection morphed into a tapestry of secrets and hidden betrayals. She was alone, really alone. There would be no rescue, no one to lift her family out of this fog of despair. Dread licked at her heels, whispers slithering through her mind, "Remember the rules." Sarah's heart thundered as she clutched her children, her skin prickling against the chill creeping into the camp. Each flickering shadow seemed to deepen, await her next move. What awaited in the cold, vast darkness? Would the morning unravel the truth, or would the woods claim them too, forever lost to the haunting whispers swirling like fog around them? Each night, the woods grew bolder. The shadows pressed against the camp like a predator, heavy with menace and secrets, curling around Sarah and her kids. Tara, her youngest, was restless. "Mommy, I can't sleep," she whispered, her small voice barely breaking the nighttime silence. Sarah gathered her daughter close, wishing she could shield them both from the encroaching dread. When the loggers returned after long shifts, their laughter felt strained, laughter attempting to drown out fear. The other women in the camp exchanged wary glances, whispering quiet warnings about what lay beyond the treeline. Sarah couldn't ignore it any longer. There was something lurking out there, something insistent that made her skin crawl. She resolved that come morning, she would investigate. She needed to know what her children might be facing, but sleep eluded her. Every noise in the forest, every rustle beneath the pines, sent her heart racing. The whispers she had dismissed before seemed to murmur her name, each syllable an urgent warning. In the dead of night, she imagined eyes staring at her from the darkness, 1,000 unseen watchers tracking her every move. The first light of dawn was tentative, barely breaking through the dense canopy. She strode purposefully toward the edge of the camp, glancing over her shoulder constantly, as if to assure herself that the unspeakable horrors she envisioned wouldn't surface. She gathered courage and a flashlight, stepping cautiously into the tight embrace of the trees. The oppressive silence was stifling, filled only with the crunch of fallen leaves beneath her feet. Deeper into the woods, the air grew colder, almost painful against her skin. Shadows shifted, teasing her senses. She focused on the stories, recounting each rule as she pressed further, hoping they might offer a lifeline through this growing gloom. Don't look back. Always heed the warnings. Then she stopped. There it was, a flash of red, glowing like embers in the darkness. Panic shot through her like ice water. She felt it, the weight of something behind her. But her feet wouldn't move. She was trapped in a web of horror. Would looking back seal her fate? Against every instinct, she turned, the flashlight illuminating thousands of eyes flickering back at her. Small creatures, nothing more than rustling leaves. Relief flooded over her, followed by anger. How could she let fear control her like this? But as she turned back, something shifted in the air. The reassuring glow of morning began to dim. The whimsical dance of sunlight vanished behind clouds, suffocating the world in premonition. The whispers grew louder around her, cold breath on her neck. You didn't follow the rules. Every hair on her body rose. She sprinted back toward camp, heart hammering in her chest. As she reached the clearing, the foreman stood there, arms crossed, eyes fixed on her. A sly smile crept across his face, lips twitching as if he was savoring her fear. I see you've been out in the woods, Sarah, he said, voice smooth yet laced with malice. Before she could respond, a low horn echoed through the camp, guttural and resonant, sending her children into a frenzy of terrified cries. The sky split, a crack of thunder shattered the stillness. And in that moment, Sarah knew, the forest was a living entity, harboring secrets it would not reveal without a price. The loggers gathered, their faces pale, eyes wide with dread. It's coming, one of them hissed as they filed in, forming a barrier against the approaching storm. But what were they truly guarding against? Remember the rules, a voice appeared from the back, barely above a whisper. Fear swelled in Sarah's chest once more as she looked around, realizing some rules are meant to be broken and some should remain unbroken. What was out there, waiting? And could she keep her children safe, or would the darkness consume them all? The wind howled through the trees, stirring up a frenzy of ghostly whispers that danced around Sarah. She could see her children huddled together, eyes wide as saucers, clinging to each other in fear. The foreman's gaze held a knowing quality that made her skin crawl. He stepped forward, pushing against the collective dread rising from the camp. The rules are there for your protection, his voice cut through the chaos, dripping with unyielding authority. Break them, and the woods will claim what is theirs. A few of the loggers shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a burly man with a scarred face, glanced at Sarah. It's called the Night Watch. It's what we do after sunset. A hand shot up from the group, trembling. It's not just shadows out there, the man said, panic flashing in his eyes. I've heard things no one should. Sarah felt dread pooling in her stomach. What do you mean? She took a cautious step forward, her heart racing as she tried to mask the tremor in her voice. That he laughed, a harsh bark that cut through the tension like glass shattering. You want to know? You really want to know? All the old tales are true. This place is cursed, and if you listen carefully, you'll hear it breathe. Her breath caught. Listen to what? Oh, don't you get it? The forest is alive. He nearly shouted now. Every tree, every bush it watches, it breathes. The eyes in the dark? They belong to something that hungers. You can hear its whispers in the wind if you're quiet enough, if you dare. As his words settled in the air, an unnatural chill swept through the camp. The children whimpered. Tara buried her face in Sarah's side while her older brother, Ethan, squinted at the tree lean. Get back to work, the foreman commanded, his tone shifting, almost revealing a peak of desperation. As the loggers dispersed, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being drawn into the forest's depths. A thick veil of anxiety draped over her. It suffocated, yet she felt an undeniable urge to uncover the truth. Through the chaos, the low horn echoed again, resonating like a war drum. The air vibrated with anticipation. Her eyes darted to the tree line, the woods now looming ominously, casting elongated shadows that taunted her. Sarah turned to her children, their faces pale, reflecting the same fear that gripped her heart. "Stay close," she ordered, resolving to remain vigilant. But even as she spoke, another echo reached her ears, singular and low, like a distant chant. It gnawed at her thoughts. In that solitude, she recalled fragments of the warnings. "Stay in your tents after dark. Never stray from the light." But wasn't it her duty to protect them? What if she could find out what lay beyond those trees? She felt the forest call, a siren song urging her to discover its secrets. Suddenly, a scream shattered her thoughts, piercing through the murmured warnings. "No!" A logger called out, stumbling backward, eyes wide with terror. "It's here!" No one knew what had emerged from the woods, but every fiber in Sarah's body screamed for her to flee. Just when she thought the situation couldn't worsen, a thick fog rolled in, smothering the camp in heaviness, choking off all light. "What is happening?" Tara's whisper quaked. "It's just fog," Sarah said, though her heart raced with unease. "We'll be okay." But just outside the perimeter of camp, shadows writhed and twisted, coiling like serpents ready to strike. She glanced over her shoulder, catching the eyes of the foreman, who was watching her intently, calculating. Her mind whirled. What would happen if she broke the rules? What price would the forest demand? If the darkness was alive, what part did she and her children play in this monstrous tale? The whispers intensified, echoing off the trees. "Get inside!" she yelled, grabbing her children by the hands. But as they turned, they caught a glimpse of a figure standing among the trees, faceless but undeniably human. The fog thickened, wrapping around her like a shroud. "We are already entwined," it whispered, voice like silk yet sharp as a blade. A cold sweat broke out on Sarah's brow as her heart thundered in terror. She stumbled back, the weight of impending chaos pressing down on her. What was the forest waiting for? And why did it feel as if the woods were claiming her very soul? "What do you want?" she breathed, her voice barely audible above the din. The figure melted back into the trees, but not without leaving a lingering promise in the air. "This is just the beginning." As the screams echoed in the distance and the camp descended into chaos, a new dread filled Sarah's heart. Had she unwittingly opened the door, or was it already too late to turn back? The fog thickened around them, suffocating and dense, as if the forest itself desired their presence. Sarah's mind raced. She could hear the distant echoes of anguish mixed with fear. Her children trembled at her sides, a fragile tether to reality amid growing confusion. "Move!" she urged, pulling Ethan and Tara toward their tent. Panic surged through her veins. The faces of the loggers flickered through her mind, their fearful warnings like phantoms chasing her. "Stay close. We can't get lost in this mess." The camp's lanterns struggled against the shroud of darkness, their feeble glow expanding and contorting in the oppressive fog like timid hearts. Sarah stepped cautiously, glancing around as the temperature plummeted. A chilling realization struck her: the deeper they ventured into the mist, the harder it became to see their surroundings. "Mom! Look!" Ethan's voice broke through her thoughts, sharp and urgent. He was pointing at a twisted tree, its gnarled branches contorting into sinister shapes that resembled clawed hands, stretching toward the heavens. She squinted, trying to focus. A sickening feeling swelled. She swore she could see something moving within its bark, undulating like a breathing creature. She tugged at Ethan's sleeve, dragging him and Tara along. "We need to hurry." The air crackled with an ancient energy, and the shadows lengthened as if reaching for them. Each step sent vibrations through the ground, as if the forest were relaying a warning, move forward and be claimed. Suddenly, a shrill shriek pierced the fog. A logger stumbled back into the camp, face pale and ashen, limbs quaking. "It's taken Jim!" he screamed, eyes wild as he looked into the forest, seeing something none dared mention. The gasp from Tara sent chills straight to Sarah's heart. "Mom, what is happening? Stay here!" she barked, throwing her body protectively in front of her children. The world felt unreal. The whispers morphed into a cacophony, beckoning and taunting, drowning reason in fear. They were ensnared, trapped beneath the mounting dread that encased the camp. The foreman's stern features emerged through the fog, his presence solid and imposing. "Get inside!" he shouted, his voice cracking with a hint of urgency that felt out of character. The command was almost desperate now, the authority previously noted replaced with a raw instinct to protect. Sarah's instincts twisted within her, torn between obeying the command and the creeping dread of disobedience. She shot a panicked glance to her children and then back to the foreman. "What do you know?" she shouted, almost desperate for the truth. "No time," he hissed, eyes darting to the dark expanse of trees. "If you're inside, you're safer. Trust me." Tara's grip tightened around Sarah's waist, and Ethan's eyes widened with fear. As they ran towards their tent, the whispers swelled, growing louder, drowning out all reason and clarity. A feeling of being hunted washed over Sarah, each breath laced with foreboding. A terrifying realization hit her. The woods weren't merely an environment, they were alive, a being reveling in the chaos, feeding off the dread. From the depths of the fog, something glinted, eyes reflecting the lantern light. "Mom, look!" Ethan shrieked, but Sarah didn't turn. She felt the urgency as a heavy pulse in her chest, urging her to keep moving despite the horror threatening to rear its head. Inside the tent, shadows flickered. She tore her gaze away from the entrance, desperately fumbling for the flashlight, her fingers trembling. The children pressed against her, fear palpable in the air, suffocating yet familiar. A sudden crack splintered the night, a log snapped, reverberating painfully through the air. Outside, the whispers rose again, a haunting symphony of despair. "What do they want?" Tara whimpered, burying her face in Sarah's side. "I don't know." Sarah felt her voice quiver, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. The whispers surrounded the tent like an angry gale, as if demanding recognition. "But we have to figure it out." Heavy footsteps approached, each trampling echo vibrating through the earth. The air grew thick, electric with anticipation. Sarah held her breath. "What is it?" she managed, heart racing. She turned, lips moving in silent prayer. Then came the thud, a presence at the tent entrance. Just beyond the fabric, she could feel its focus locking on them, seeping through the veil of security as if the forest were closing in, waiting for her to make a choice. Would she face the terror lurking just outside, or would it be her children who would have to decide their fate? And as the whispers crescendoed into a riotous howl, she understood, something was coming. Breaking through the thin fabric, something clawed at the edges of the tent, and an icy chill swept through. Sarah's heart thundered as she faced the unknown. Would the truth keep them alive or consume them whole? The fabric of the tent shuddered, the claws on the outside ripping and tearing. Panic surged in waves, making Sarah's stomach churn. "Get back!" she shouted, positioning herself against the entrance, fists clenched, trembling with unresolved fear. Ethan and Tara's wide eyes reflected only horror, their small bodies trying to mold into her as if she could somehow absorb their fright. "Mom!" Tara whimpered, but the sound was lost in an orchestra of whispers that spiraled into a cacophony of madness outside. Each whisper bore a cold, bitter edge, sharp enough to slice through the very fabric of reality. It was as if the forest was recounting dark tales, tales of souls ensnared, calling out to her, promising knowledge wrapped in dread. Another sharp raking noise, and Sarah's heart nearly stopped. It was close, too close. She had never known fear like this. It clawed at her throat, stifling her breath. What did it want? Was it hungry? Was it angry? She couldn't think. Time stretched thin, every second a pause in the face of terror. "Mom, what happens if it gets in?" Ethan whispered, his small voice making Sarah's resolve waver. She knelt down to his level, gripping his shoulders. "We won't let it, baby. We will figure this out. I promise." Just as she spoke the words, the tent shifted again, the ground vibrating as a heavy weight landed right outside their refuge. Sarah's breath hitched. This was no creature of fur and fang but something more malign, something ancient. "Do you feel it?" Tara's voice broke the silence, quivering and high-pitched. "It's hungry." The thought echoed in Sarah's mind. Yes, hungry for fear, fed by their despair. She glanced around the tent frantically. The small flashlight flickered, a weak pulse of light battling the encroaching shadows. She felt trapped, but trapped was better than facing whatever lurked outside. Suddenly, the whispers shifted, turning sinister and mocking. "Let us in just a little peek." You'll see the words crawled into her ears, turning her insides to ice. "Get away!" she roared, though her voice sounded small in the vast darkness. She shoved against the tent wall, but the horrors outside just kept clawing, relentless in their pursuit. A loud snap echoed, followed by another shriek, supplemented by a rustling in the forest. Something pulled at the edges of the tent again, something demanding entrance, a presence hanging just within sight, indistinct yet potent. Then, Sarah remembered the foreman's warning: if they were inside, they were safer. But what if he was wrong? What if it was just a trap, a means of isolating them? "We need to find a way out," she nearly whispered. Ethan quivered, "But the fog, it's everywhere." She had to focus. There has to be an escape plan, a way to outsmart whatever that is. The thought sparked clarity. They had lanterns, supplies, and she had her kids. But the terror pressing against their sanctuary left her no illusion. She wasn't just facing an unknown creature, she was staring down the dark tendrils of the forest that wanted them all. The crushing weight of the moment shifted, her thoughts turned frantic. "I need to stay calm for them," she thought. "If I break, they will too." Just then, the ground shook again, and the whispers turned feverish. "Let us in, be part of us," almost as if summoned. A sharp breath caught in Sarah's throat as something pierced the tent. Sharp, thorny tendrils snaked into their space, creeping forward to explore. One tentacle brushed against her leg, icy and slithering, sending shockwaves of dread coursing through her whole being. "No!" she screamed, swatting at it. The children cried out as the slick, thin tendrils pulled back for a moment, gauging her response. The others outside echoed in response, howls of frustrated hunger filling the air. In that instant of harsh clarity, Sarah knew they could not stay, contained like captive prey. They had to escape. "Ethan, Tara, we're moving," she barked, rushing towards the back of the tent. They had to get out before they were consumed. The children followed, their little feet pattering in terror. Sarah tore through the fabric, flicking off the flashlight. Plunging into the enveloping fog felt like stepping into water. Cold and dark, it blanketed them. Disoriented, she grasped her children's hands fiercely and moved towards the damp darkness, every instinct screaming to run, but something in the fog shifted, foreshadowing a deeper terror, a looming presence watching. What if the fog wasn't a barrier, but the predator itself? As they stepped deeper into the chilling shadows, the whispers began again, and Sarah could feel the forest breathing around them, waiting. The fog thickened, wrapping around Sarah and her children like a suffocating shroud. Each step felt as though it were muffled by the eerie silence, the whispers receding into a low hum, just a distant memory of the terror they left behind. Yet, the weight of something dark lingered, pressing down on her chest, making her heart race. "Mom, where are we going?" Ethan's voice trembled, threading chilly fingers through the night air. Tara squeezed his hand tighter, her face pallid in the dimness, eyes wide with fear. Anywhere but here. Sarah replied, forcing urgency into her tone, though inside, panic clawed at her. She led them through the murky gloom, aware they could be walking into a trap, each moment echoing with uncertainty. As they trudged deeper, Sarah felt the ground shift beneath them. An unsettling squelch accompanied every step, wet and sticky, like they were walking on something alive. Focus, she thought, grounding herself against the creeping dread. There had to be an end to this. There had to be safety. Suddenly, a sharp twang pierced the air. From the corner of her eye, she spotted movement. A shadow lunged from behind a tree, a dark silhouette against the fog. Shallow breaths from something that shouldn't be there. Run! Sarah yelled, pulling her children with her, adrenaline surging through her veins. Their feet pounded on the uneven ground as they stumbled forward, the whispers changing tone, escalating to wild laughter that pierced through the fog like daggers. Behind them, the creature moved with unnatural speed, swift and slithering, skimming through the trees with a grace that sent chills down her spine. It was no longer just the fog, no longer just shadows, it was a pursuer, hungry for them. Faster! Sarah urged as they broke through the first layer of trees. A clearing opened before them, a vast stretch of deadened stumps, remnants of the forest butchered by machinery. A place of desolation. Why would they cut it all down? Tara whimpered, tears streaming down her cheeks. It doesn't matter, Sarah snapped, forcing herself to remain composed. We need to keep moving. The feeling of hopelessness tightened around her like a noose. The forest felt alive and hungry for the demise of the intruders. Ethan pointed towards a dilapidated structure in the distance. What's that? Another campsite, maybe? Shelter. Sarah's heart leaped. They could hide, lure whatever was hunting them into a trap. Moving toward it felt like a risk, but it was the only option. They sprinted across the barren ground, breathless and trembling. But as they reached the small cabin, dread crept in again. The door hung open, swaying in a haunting rhythm, inviting yet ominous. Shadows danced inside. Mom, it's dark. Tara hesitated, peering into the depths of the cabin. We have no choice. Sarah pressed, shoving aside her own fear as she took the lead. They needed to regain their strength, regroup. The whispers added layers of confusion, colliding in a buzz of sinister sounds. Inside, the air felt different, thick and stale, clinging to their skin. Old chandeliers swung above, creaking ever so slightly. Foul remnants of meals gone rotten lingered, punctuating the silence with a gory reminder of what once was. Stay close, Sarah whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. Tara and Ethan clung to her, eyes darting around, searching for any flicker of life. But only shadows answered. Desperation gripped Sarah as she surveyed the room, heart hammering against her ribcage. She spotted a rusty lantern on a table near the back, a timer's promise veiled in dust. Shelf, I'll get the lantern, she said, inching closer, relief mixing with dread. Forgetting the whispers, the unnatural cold, if only she could find some warmth in the light. As her fingers grasped it, the ground rumbled again, a low growl resonating beneath them. The laughter outside erupted once more, a taunting symphony that made her blood run cold. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. She turned, seeing terror etched clear across his features. What is it? She rushed back towards them. From the corner of the room, shadows spiraled, and the door shuddered against an unseen force. The whispers crescendoed into a roar, blending with the growl, a chaos of sound that enveloped them just as something enormous pressed against the door. Just then, an unearthly screech echoed over the fog, and something colossal broke through the twisted trees beyond the cabin, looming ominously in the twilight. What happens now? Tara asked, her voice barely audible, fear cascading around them. It felt like a question hanging in the air, waiting for a response they were not ready to give. The shadows thickened, and Sarah could feel the forest closing in. They had stumbled into something far more dangerous than just a beast, a morbid tale of survival written in blood. Where would they go now, beyond broken wood and shattered dreams? The ground beneath them trembled once more, and the whispers turned hungry again, leaving them with a single horrifying choice: would they fight, or would darkness claim them? The cabin's creaking intensifying, Sarah pressed her back against the wall, her heart pounding like a drum in her ears. Every breath felt like it could be her last. The whispering had transformed into a chorus of dark intent, malevolent and mocking. Shadows twisted and stretched across the room, morphing into grotesque figures that seemed to shift closer to her with each flicker of the lantern's dim light. "Mom, please, what is happening?" Tara whimpered, her small body trembling against Sarah's side. "We have to find a way out," Sarah whispered back, voice tight with desperation. But the room felt like it was closing in around them, an inescapable trap. Outside, the forest roared, branches snapping and soil shifting as something primal hunted for its terrified prey. The lantern flickered, casting frantic shadows that danced ominously on the peeling walls. Sarah took a shaky breath. "Stay close. Stick together." Ethan squeezed his sister's hand, glancing at the door where the once inviting entrance had turned into a horrific threshold. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet something held them back, a sinister presence pressing against the cabin like a hand tightening around their throats. Suddenly, a loud bang reverberated through the cabin walls. A howl that thundered like a jet engine ripped through the stillness, shaking the very floor beneath their feet. It was a sound layering terror over desperation, a reminder that outside safety lay a ravenous beast. "Climb up!" Sarah suddenly shouted. She rushed over to a rickety staircase that spiraled into darkness above. "We can't stay here." She didn't wait for approval. Terror drove her to grab Tara and Ethan, pulling them along. As they clambered up, raw splinters of wood dug into their palms, but the pain was a welcome distraction from fear. Each step creaked underfoot, a symphony of anxiety that echoed into the unknown. At the top, they emerged into a small loft, just enough space to crouch between the rafters. The air was thick with dust and dread. Shadows flitted across the gap where moonlight streamed in, illuminating the dust motes that hung suspended in the air like spirits caught in limbo. "Do you think it saw us?" Ethan whispered, breath trembling. "I don't know," Sarah replied, peeking through the narrow opening. Outside, she caught a glimpse of what had broken through the forest's tree-line, a hulking figure cloaked in massive shadows, snout elongated and teeth glistening with malice. Heavy footsteps pounded against the earth, the monster sniffing the air as it searched. Mom, Tara's voice fell to a whisper, eyes wide as saucers. What if we can't get out?" Frustration gnawed at Sarah's heart. "There has to be a way. We just need to wait for it to pass." The lie tasted bitter. They were trapped, exposed in every sense. A sinister growl reverberated through the cabin, shaking the very foundation, piercing through their resolve. It was a warning, a proclamation of their mortality. Suddenly, the whispers returned low and guttural, echoing through the walls, intertwining with the creature's growl, creating the most terrifying hymn. Sarah shuddered as she clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. "Listen," she said, leaning into the cold air, heart racing. "We have to remember the rules. Remember what I told you." "The rules?" Tara repeated, panic edging her voice. "Yes." Sarah pressed, "The rules for survival. We can't forget them now. 1. Stay silent, 2. Stay with me, 3. Never go outside after dark." But her mind raced. Had she even touched on the most crucial rules, a sudden crash made them all freeze as something powerful slammed against the wooden structure below. The cabin swayed, sprinkles of dust raining down as nails screamed in protest. Sarah held her breath, praying that whatever hunted them wouldn't find its way up. Carving through her thoughts, the growl turned into chilling laughter, echoing from all directions. The walls trembled with each laugh, a cruel reminder of impending doom. Suddenly, the lantern flickered, light dimming as darkness loomed closer like a wave. "What if we break the last rule?" Ethan murmured, eyes impossibly wide, the fear creeping into his voice. Tara gasped. "You mean using the last spark of ingenuity born from desperation, Sarah glanced back at the rafters. There was a window, barely large enough, but a chance to escape. Listen. If we can jump out, we might evade it, she urged, adrenaline pumping through her veins. It's a risk, but what if it sees us? Tara blurted out. We have to trust each other. Sarah felt the weight of their lives in her hands. The beast would soon be upon them. They were running out of time. Just then, those claws began to scratch at the cabin door, the noise slashing through their resolve. Mom! Ethan cried, his voice breaking. It's right there. With no choices left, Sarah turned to her children, the unease deepening within her. They might just be seconds away from freedom or a reckoning with darkness beyond their worst fears. Now! She yelled, the adrenaline surging. Jump! As they leaped from their fragile hiding space, hearts racing against their chests, would they land safely, or would the night swallow them whole? The echoes of their impending fate fell into a silence that promised uncertainty, the darkness waiting with hungry eyes. They soared into the night, the world beyond the cabin swirling in a rush of cold air and desperate hope. As they hit the ground, the crunch of fallen leaves absorbed their weight, muffling the sound of their descent, but it wasn't enough to mask their breathless gasps of fear. Run! Sarah cried, grabbing Tara and Ethan by their hands. They stumbled away from the cabin, the shadows clutching at their heels, the growl echoing ominously behind them. The moon hung high, illuminating the twisted trees like skeletal fingers reaching out. The forest was dark, but the shrillness of the air hummed with life and death. A sense of direction was lost, they just needed to escape. Over there. Ethan pointed toward a thicket of pine trees, their trunks towering like soldiers keeping vigil. They darted into the underbrush, the branches clawing at their clothes as if the forest itself sought to ensnare them. Sarah risked a glance back. The cabin loomed a gaping mouth waiting to swallow them whole. But there was no time to dwell. They had to keep moving. Stick close. She urged, her voice tight as they weaved between trees. The whispers from the cabin lingered in her mind, a chilling reminder that terror had followed them. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a deafening crash as the creature burst through the trees, its massive body shaking the ground with each stride. Sarah felt the impact of its presence thick and suffocating. It's coming! Tara screamed, her small hand slipping slightly from Sarah's grip as panic surged within her. No! Hold on! Sarah yanked her daughter back, her heart racing as adrenaline flooded her veins. They darted deeper into the woods, branches snapping beneath their hurried steps, but the forest betrayed them, shadows twisted and turned, disorienting them. How had they entered this maze? Every tree looked the same, every whisper held the promise of doom. Frantic, Sarah spotted an old logging road, faintly visible in the moonlight. This way! She shouted, pulling her children toward the path, a thin line threading through the forest that might lead them far away from the beast. As they sprinted along the road, Ethan glanced over his shoulder. It's still behind us. His face was pale, streaked with dirt and tears, smudged fearfully against the backdrop of night, yet the thicker the shadows grew around them, the more they sensed the true horror. The beast moved faster than they could, its breath a heavy sigh that echoed between the trees. Then, just ahead, Sarah saw the glimmer of something unnatural, a clearing, illuminated by the eerie glow of the moon. Almost there. She urged, feeling a strange, desperate urgency tightening in her chest. The thought of safety flickered like a candle, dangerously close yet painfully out of reach, but as they burst into the clearing, Sarah's hope warped into horror. A circle of uprooted trees surrounded them, like sentinels, but among them lay remnants of an old campsite. Torn tents covered in mildew, shattered lanterns, and scattered bones of small animals that had not found their way out. Mom, what's this? Tara's voice trembled at the sight, her eyes wide with realization. Sarah's heart sank. The signs of a struggle, of survival gone wrong, twisted each breath into a snare. This wasn't just a campsite, it was a warning. What if others? Ethan started, but the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the tree line, pooling dread at the back of their throats. The growl returned, low and fierce, and a dark form slipped through the shadows. It was closer now, the strong, musky scent of its presence assaulting their senses like a looming storm. In that moment, fear morphed into a dizzying panic. The rules echoed through Sarah's mind, taunting her with every uttered syllable. But did those rules still apply? She needed a plan. But just as her thoughts sparked with frantic desperation, the creature came fully into view, its gleaming eyes locking onto Sarah's. An impulse surged through her run. But the pull of shock rooted her in place. The others were still waiting for her. Tara's voice quivered, drawing her attention back. Together. Sarah shouted, snapping back to reality. We need to trust the rules. And as the beast prepared to lunge, she grabbed her children's hands tight, ready to face their fate, but just as they turned to flee the clearing, the beast roared, shaking the very ground beneath them. Would they escape this time, or was this the end of their desperate dance with darkness? A chilling thought slid through Sarah's mind. The cabin hadn't just contained horrors of the woods, but secrets long buried. Would they unearth something more? They shot forward, hearts hammering, feet pounding against the earth as the darkness enveloped them. The beast's growl reverberated through the air, urging them faster. Sarah's mind raced. Would they survive, or would they become another entry in the twisted tales of the woods? But then the ill-fated campsite melted into memory, and Sarah began to read the scene before her. This wasn't just a clearing, it felt alive with stories of dread, despair, and lost souls. Shadows flitted in the corners of her vision, the past whispering warnings she dared not ignore. Keep moving. She barked, dragging her children with her, each step a struggle against the gravity of despair crashing down around them. They rounded the clearing, eyes flicking nervously from tree to tree, waiting for it to leap out once more. The moonlight painted grotesque images on the trunks, faces twisted in agony, mouths gaping in silent screams. Sweat trickled down Sarah's spine, mingling with the biting cold. She couldn't let it overtake her. She had to stay strong. Ethan. She spun around as she realized her son had fallen behind. He stood frozen, staring at a twig that had snapped into the shape of a hand. Ethan, no. Come on. The growl of the creature echoed again, closer this time, and she felt her skin prickle with primal fear. They were being hunted. Ethan's legs moved at last, breaking the spell of horror. This way. Tara shouted, pointing toward a thicket of brush. Sarah steered them toward it, her heart pounding louder than the growl. If they could just hide, just find a moment of reprieve, maybe they'd discern a way out, but as they pushed through the underbrush, the world they entered felt wrong. It was darker here, more dense, and she could no longer hear the beast's steps. Had they lost it? Was there still a chance? Then she spotted something shimmering in the dark. A glinting knife, half buried in the forest floor. Bile crept up Sarah's throat. Could it have belonged to someone who met a terrible fate here? Was it too late to recover? Mom! Where are we? Tara's voice trembled, breaking Sarah's trance. I don't like it here. I know, honey, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. We'll get out. They pressed on, the oppressive silence pressing down on them like a weight. The tension snapped when a twig snapped behind them, louder than a gunshot. The beast had returned. Run! Sarah screamed. The children leapt forward, but as they sprinted, she felt the earth shake with the force of its weight. With each pounding heartbeat, the forest twisted around them like a living entity, branches closing in, the shadows growing restless. What's happening? Ethan gasped as they stumbled over roots and rocks. I don't know. Suddenly, a cloying scent filled the air, a rancid mixture of rotting flesh and decay. Panic surged. Sarah skidded to a halt, her eyes wide as she recognized it, the scent radiating from deep within the woods, thick as fog. It was not just a beast they ran from, it was something much worse, something that had devoured those torn tents, those tiny bones. What if we run into it? Tara whimpered, looking to her mother, eyes a storm of fear and trust. Then, just like that, the ground shook as the creature charged toward them, faster than before, snarling and clawing at the ground. The clearing was gone, their path disappeared into nothing. "Follow me!" Sarah shouted again, panic rising, stuffing down the cold grip of despair around her heart. They sprinted blindly, deeper into the woods. All around them, shadows danced in chaotic patterns. Sarah felt like she was racing through an ancient nightmare. Each footfall echoed louder, each breath grew shallow. Then everything froze, time halted. The creature skidded to a stop in front of them, impossibly towering. Sarah's throat tightened, and in a flash, darkness seeped into her mind. It began to move, but she didn't scream. She clutched her children tighter, daring to look into its eyes, sharp, penetrating, yet disturbingly human. What horror lay in those depths? And what awaited them if they dared to respond? The shadows shifted again, wrapping them in an eerie embrace, as a low voice whispered through the trees, "Are you ready to uncover their secrets?" With the creature looming above them, raw fear electrified the air, pressing down on Sarah like a weight she could hardly bear. She could feel the pulse of terror in her children, their small bodies trembling against her, anchored in a moment that felt suspended in time. "Mom, what do we do?" Ethan's voice was barely a whisper, his wide eyes searching her face for reassurance. "We stare it down," Sarah replied softly, though her throat felt dry as sandpaper. "We don't run." The creature moved closer, the shadows dancing around it, swirling like an angry storm. Its breath was hot and reeked of rot, a stench that clawed at Sarah's senses. She held her children tighter, gripping their small hands as if they were lifelines. The growl echoed menacingly, enveloping them as she stared into the creature's gleaming eyes. Something flickered in her mind, a feeling of recognition that sent shivers down her spine. "Look deeper." A voice echoed within her, just a whisper amid the chaos. Was it the forest? Or was it herself urging the action that lay behind the terror? At that moment, she understood. The rules. They were about more than survival, they were keys to understanding the very fabric of the forest, of the creature before them. "We have to remember the stories, what the loggers said." Sarah's voice was growing resolute, grounding like the dark earth beneath them. "We didn't just come here to run. We came to face this." A surge of courage replaced the fear weighing her down. "We may not know everything you want," she directed to the creature, feeling lighter, "but you can't take us." The creature recoiled slightly, its eyes flashing uncertainty as if surprised by her defiance. Behind its malice lay a glimmer of something deeply rooted, something ancient. "Stop!" Tara suddenly exclaimed, her small voice echoing bravely through the air. "Please, we just want to understand." In that instant, the snarl shifted. The creature faltered, the shadows around it hesitating. It was as if the darkness itself was unsure of what to do. Perhaps, just maybe, they had caught it off guard. "What do we know?" Sarah asked herself. "Don't look back. Always heed the warnings." An adrenaline rush surged through her veins. "We are here to listen." The forest held its breath. It was as if time had paused. Her heart pounded, each beat syncopated with the whispers, mingling with the frantic rustling around them, voices begging for understanding. Sarah took a small step forward, feeling a connection to the land beneath her feet. "Reveal yourself to us. We're ready." Silence descended, wrapping around them in a cocoon of anticipation. Then, from within the shadows, the outline of the creature began to shift and shimmer, a dance of darkness, revealing a figure that was no longer monstrous. It appeared in fragments of the logging stories interwoven between the branches of the trees. Its essence morphed into a guardian of the woods instead of a predator. "We've wandered into something we didn't understand," Sarah murmured, realization dawning as old tales fluttered back. They were fables, warnings from those who once tread here, a warning of disrespect. Had they come to the forest only as trespassers, leaving chaos in their wake. The creature's eyes softened, sparking recognition in Sarah's heart. She saw the pain and the burden it carried, the weight of lost souls, the echoes of loggers who had not respected its rules. "We will not repeat their mistakes," she promised, drawing her children closer. One breath could define their fate. The whispers returned, sharper than before, but now they felt almost nurturing, as if the woods were welcoming them back into their arms. It acknowledged their plight, promising to safeguard them if they were willing to respect the boundaries of nature. "Let us leave this place together," Sarah said clearly, not backing down though her heart raced. The creature swung its head, a slow nod-like movement. The shadows peeled away, revealing a narrow path bathed in moonlight, an escape route, a chance at redemption. Sarah's heart surged with hope, her voice steady. "Let us go. Kids." Tara and Ethan followed tightly against her, heartbeats sinking in unison. They stepped cautiously onto the path, veering away from the darkness they had felt cloaked them. The forest felt lighter now, unfurling like a lifting fog, its whispers transformed into sighs of relief. With each step, Sarah felt the fog of dread dissipate, the woods releasing a grip that had sought to bind them. They emerged from the trees, back into the clearing where the horrid remnants of the campsite still lay, a reminder of the danger they had so narrowly avoided. "Mom, will we come back?" Ethan asked, voice small yet filled with wonder. "Only if we respect it," she replied firmly, casting one last look back at the forest, now a place of trepidation turned sanctuary. The path now held another promise, a chance to reflect on their choices and a chance to teach the lessons they had learned here. As they neared their camp, the air felt cleaner, almost sacred. Shadows still danced across the landscape, but this time, there was sunlight to guide their way, a blushing dawn rising in the distance. Sarah pulled her children close, embracing them against the growing warmth. The woods had spoken, and they had listened. She inhaled deeply, the promise of a fresh start mingled with the scent of pine and the lingering breath of adventure. "Remember the stories, Ethan. Remember the forest." With that, they stepped forward into the light, a family awakened, a new beginning forged from the whispers of the wilderness they had once feared. Now, this is the moment to act. You need to subscribe now to catch the next exclusive, spine-chilling adventure. Smash that like button now to help our channel grow and feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. We want to hear your thoughts. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. Only true fans understand how crucial it is to support our journey.